Hello, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank IREX for having me here today. I always look forward to their events. Their whole team is just truly fantastic. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you as well for joining me here today to hear a little bit more about my company, Cmb Regional Centers, and our current offering, our Group 75 partnership. My name is Matt Hogan. I am Vice President of Project Development for Cmb. And Cmb is one of the largest active regional centers in EB5. We have a track record of over 23 years in this industry, originally established back in 1997. And we work obviously in the EB5 investment program. EB5 is the immigration by investment vehicle for the United States. And keep in mind, EB5 is truly that best option for yourself and your family who want to be able to permanently immigrate to the United States, receive a permanent green card. And remember, one single investment, that minimum investment of $900,000, creates eligibility for yourself, your children, and your spouse, and that's any children under the age of 21. And so the EB5 program has been around for quite some time. Cmb as a company, we've been very successful in EB5. We always talk about the level of success that we have, but what's really important is it's not our success. It's the success of our investors. We've worked with over 5,700 clients from over 100 different countries, including many investors from India, of course. We have over 4,900 of those investors who've already received their I-526 petition approval. That's their initial petition approval. And you can see over 1,400 of those investors who have gone kind of full circle through their immigration process, have removed their conditions, proving to the US government that they created jobs within the EB5 program, they sustained their investment, and they now have their permanent green cards. Over 1,700 of our limited partners have also gotten their capital back. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in. There's very few regional centers who have been able to say that they have investors who have gone full circle, gotten their green cards and gotten full return of capital. And Cmb has been able to accomplish that for over 1,700 investors from many different countries, from many different walks of life that have their own unique challenges. We've been able to help them overcome those challenges and live their dream of immigrating to the United States with their family members. Now, Cmb as a company, we're a pretty big company. We're over 50 staff members, and we have representatives from all around the world. In-house, we speak over 15 different languages. You can see we have investors from over 100 different countries, and we cover a lot of languages in-house, as I mentioned. So if we have somebody who picks up the phone and calls Cmb and says, I'm interested in EB5, chances are we have someone who can speak with them in their native language and be able to assist them. We provide somewhat of a concierge level service to those clients. Every individual EB5 investor we have is assigned to one of our specific investor relations managers. So you have someone that you can call and you can speak to at any time. You always are going to have someone there who's going to advocate for you, someone who's going to be able to deal with your problems, who's going to be able to provide you updates on your projects, who's going to be able to kind of assist you every step along the way in your EB5 immigration pursuit. That's something that I can tell you firsthand that you don't see in a lot of other regional centers. We come across a lot of other competitors of ours. They might be one or two people operating a regional center. They're hopeful that that client's immigration attorney is going to work with them throughout the way, or that an agency representative or wealth manager who represents that client will help assist them with that client. But we provide that one-on-one level service to the client directly. It's something very special. Now, as a company, we've grown. We have projects all over the United States. One thing that's really important about Cmb is we're not a developer. We operate similarly to a bank in that we're out there looking for EB5 investment opportunities. We look at dozens and dozens of projects every year, and we only pick the projects that we think make the most sense to our EB5 investors. And you can see we've taken on projects all over the country, and that's because wherever we think that there's a good opportunity for an EB5 investment, one that's going to create the jobs, and one that we're working with a developer that's trustworthy and has a great track record, we'll go there to take on that opportunity. And again, it's not about taking on projects that best suit Cmb. It's about taking on projects that best suit our EB5 investors. In each and every one of those projects, we follow a very simple philosophy, and that's that we put the goals of our EB5 investors above all else. And this is something that if you've ever seen me present in EB5 before, I talk about every single time, because it's truly something that you can't be remiss in recognizing, and that is that the goals of every EB5 investor are first and foremost the green card. It's the whole reason why you do an EB5 investment. Remember, to the US government, the EB5 program is a job creation program. And so how do you get that green card? You have to be able to invest into a project that's going to create the jobs. If we can accomplish that for our EB5 investors, they will get that green card. We've never failed our EB5 investors in that regard. We have 100% success in our partnerships in being able to create the jobs necessary for our investors to be able to get their green cards. Second most important goal is return of the investment. How do you accomplish that? You pick a good project. You work with a trustworthy developer, one that's going to service the debt and repay it on time. And CMB as a company, we originated the loan model in EB5. And so with every one of our partnerships, we structure a strong loan, good collateral. We make sure that we have the ability to go after that collateral if the borrower defaults. And believe me, we will do that. There's a lot of regional centers out there that when the going gets tough, as a lot of people have seen in COVID, and challenges that the economy has faced in COVID and certain projects have faced in COVID, they've just simply walked away from their commitments to their EB5 investors. CMB would never do that. CMB will foreclose on a project. If we have to, we will enforce the terms and conditions of our loan agreement, because we're talking about our investors here. We're talking about protecting our investors, and that's the service that we give to them. The third most important goal of every EB5 investor, and I always put it last, and you see it here highlighted in a little different color, that's return on investment. Make no mistake, an EB5 investment is not the same as a normal business investment. This is a risk mitigated investment structured for the purposes of creating jobs and getting you your green card. And so we think about that with every step of the phase in which we structure these opportunities and select these opportunities. And so if you're out there and you're looking at other EB5 opportunities and they're promising high rates of return so that they can match maybe other market rate business opportunities you have, you got to be thinking to yourself, why are you doing this? The purpose of EB5 is to come up with risk mitigated projects that work for me, work for my family. It's not about getting rich on an EB5 investment. Remember, high rate of return can often mean high risk, and that's not what you're looking for in EB5. So I want to transition a second and talk to you a little bit about CMB's current offering, Cmb Group 75. So Cmb Group 75 is what we call Hillwood Commerce Center or Commerce Business Park 275. It's a $26.1 million EB5 raise that would come from 29 EB5 investors. It does qualify for that $900,000 investment level. And it will involve the development and construction of a major logistics facility. It's a build-to-suit logistics facility for a top Fortune 500 tenant. And I'll get to that in a little bit more detail here in a second. Now, the developer we're working with is called Hillwood Development Company. They're originally founded by the Perot family. The Perot family is a very big name in the United States. Ross Perot Sr. actually ran for president of the United States twice back in the 1990s. His son, Ross Perot Jr., founded Hillwood back in 1988, and they have a track record of over 30 years of success in development, particularly industrial logistics development and master plan residential communities. They're a leader in this industry, and they're a terrific development partner to work with. You can see since 1988, they've developed 158 million square feet of logistics space all across the United States. They have a massive footprint too. Over 61 industrial markets, 28 states and 6 countries, and 9 US-based offices, 5 international offices. This company is like I said, a leader in what they do, and they've been a pleasure to work with. We have a long and developed track record in working with Hillwood. In total, we have 31 partnerships that we've taken on with Hillwood. So you saw that number. This is Group 75. We've done about 75 total offerings in EB5. 31 of those offerings have been with Hillwood. And the reason why we like working with Hillwood is because their partnerships that we're able to structure have been successful. That's first and foremost. Remember, it's about what suits the needs of our clients. 25 of those partnerships have already gone through the first immigration cycle and received I-526 or I-924 petition approval. 7 of those partnerships have already made it into the I-829 adjudication stage. Every single one that's made it to that stage has been approved. And you can see they've repaid loans in 14 different partnerships. They've never defaulted on a loan of CMBs, and they've never failed to complete their projects and create the jobs necessary for the EB5 investors. And that's something that creates an unbelievable recipe for success. We always say in this industry, or as a company rather, we're going to try and keep it simple. We're going to stick to a proven model, and we're not going to fix what hasn't been broken. And so far, the model that we've put together with Hillwood has been largely successful, and we look forward to doing many more partnerships with these guys. They're a tremendous partner, tremendous development partner. So jumping back to our project specifically, it's a large Class A build-to-suit logistics facility. It'll be a fulfillment center for a large Fortune 500 company. That tenant, we have to keep that name confidential. We can certainly share the tenant's name and any information after you've completed an NDA and you're doing your due diligence on the project. And that's huge. You have to do that due diligence, and we can make available a lot of the information that you're going to want to see. That can be at your fingertips as you go through this process. So you can see it's a 517,000 square foot facility on a 51.5 acre land site. And it's fully executed a 15-year lease with this tenant. Now, what's important about that lease agreement is that it also outlines certain work to be completed. Hillwood and this tenant have a track record in working together. In fact, CMB has funded many of the facilities that Hillwood and this tenant have completed in the past. And so we're really lucky to have the opportunity to work with this team again. From a location standpoint, the project is located in Metro Detroit, Michigan, very close to the Detroit airport there, and also making it close to the US-Canadian border. The project has already started construction, and it'll be completed in July of this year. So it's not too far away. A lot of the job creation for this project has already been completed. So that's something else that should be very appealing to EB5 investors. The project is fully financed. It's already underway. If you do Google searches for Hillwood, Detroit, Michigan, Commerce Center, you can find articles that talk about Hillwood and this tenant in more detail. As I mentioned, it's located in Metro Detroit, Michigan. A lot of people internationally might know Detroit as being the automotive hub of the United States. Huge manufacturing core. It's the 14th largest metropolitan area in the United States. And it's going through a serious revitalization. It's had ups and downs economically following the 2008 financial crisis. And now it's reinventing itself. And logistics is reinventing itself. And largely, these logistics hubs are allowing it to do that. They create a massive number of jobs for the local economy. And because of its location, it has a strategic advantage in being able to service the upper Midwest, Northwestern Ohio, Northeastern Indiana, and of course, the state of Michigan as well. As I mentioned, the project very easily qualifies as a TEA for that minimum investment amount of $900,000. We can share that report with you. We've created that internally with using the data that we've always used to build those reports and submit to the USCIS. So talking a little bit about the capital structure for this one, it's very balanced capital structure. It is fully capitalized. Comerica Bank is the senior lender. The EB5 loan represents 30% of the overall capital stack, and the borrower at the point in time in which the full EB5 raise is completed will have 14% equity remaining in the deal. So what's important to know about that developer's equity component is right now, they've actually overfunded their equity component. So they've overfunded their equity to allow that additional equity to serve as bridge capital for the EB5 raise. So as EB5 is raised, it backs down that equity component, and it'll eventually stop at about 14%. It's a structure that will allow the project to continue to move forward and give investors some safety and security in that if for some reason the EB5 raise can't be completed, the equity will remain in place and the project will be able to finish its construction. Again, it's fully leased. And so the borrower's model is very simple and straightforward. Once it's completed, the tenant will take occupancy of the facility, start paying lease rent, and the borrower will look to then sell the project to a long-term holder. It's a 6-year loan, so it has plenty of time to be able to complete that process in advance of the EB-5 loan becoming due. Last but not least, job creation. Now, as I mentioned earlier, job creation in EB-5 is one of the most crucial elements to any project. We've never had a project fail to complete the jobs necessary to allow our investors to get their green cards. And this project is certainly no exception. This project is going to have a massive job creation buffer. As you can see, EB-5 investors only need 10 jobs to be able to qualify for the removal of their conditions and approval of their I-829. This one's going to create 17.6 jobs per investor, 76.55 job creation buffer. It's a massive number. And as I mentioned, because of the status of construction, it's been ongoing for months now. Much of that job creation has already started to commence. And as we raise capital and that capital gets into the final construction phases of the project, the balance of that job creation will be completed. And this can't be overlooked. There's a lot of regional centers out there that take a lot of risk when it comes to job creation. They use tricky bridge models and things of that nature that put the investors in a certain level of risk in being able to gain nexus to that job creation. And that's something that we just simply don't do. We look to make sure that all of the EB-5 funds are raised and made available to the project during the construction phase, so that there's no doubt when the USCIS reviews our petition that job creation number will be hit and that those EB-5 investors will be able to get their green card. So with the last couple minutes of my presentation, I want to be able to transition for a second. EB-5 as an industry is going through a lot of transitions over the last couple of years. As a lot of you may know who have been considering EB-5, new regulations hit this program back in 2019. And right now, the EB-5 program is working towards its next sunset date in June of this year, June 30th of 2021. So right now, there is a sense of urgency. The clock is ticking on the program. There's favorable trade winds blowing. The Biden administration has proven itself to be a much more immigration-friendly administration. And we're very optimistic that we're going to see an extension to the EB-5 program, just as we always have in the past. In fact, we hope that in the coming weeks, we'll see the reintroduction of the Grassley-Leahy bill in EB-5. CMB has been a long time advocate for that bill. It'll provide crucial reform elements and an extension to the program that I think will best suit the needs of the investors in the program and allow this program to create jobs for the U.S. economy while they need it most, while everyone's recovering from COVID-19. And so, a lot of people have questioned, what's the future look like in EB-5? The future in EB-5 is bright. And now is truly the time to take advantage of good projects that you have on the market at a point in time in which I think the economy is going to continue to recover, and EB-5 in general will have some unique advantages from maybe more favorable legislation in the future and favorable favor, I guess, from an administration that has proven itself to be more immigration friendly. The last thing I want to mention is that just because there's favorable things going in EB-5, there's a bright future ahead of EB-5. It doesn't mean that investors don't need to do their due diligence. I can't stress to you enough how important it is that you work with a regional center with a proven track record, that you're not swayed by marketing techniques, by regional centers out there touting expedited processing or things of that nature. You always have to look at the regional center. You have to look at the project. You have to look at the developer they're working with. You got to make sure that you're going to put your trust in a proven regional center who can create jobs, who can get your petitions approved, and who can get your capital back, and who at the end of the day is going to look after your best interest. There's a lot of groups out there that say that they'll do those things, and we've seen have walked away from their projects CMB has been around for over 20 years. We're going to be around for many, many years into the future. And we will always put your interests first. And we look forward to working with you. I think now we can open it up to Q&A. I want to thank everybody for giving me the time to talk a little bit more about my company and our Group 75 offering.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for your presentation. We now invite questions from the attendees. You're requested to click the raise your hand button on your screen, and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question. Over to you, Lavanya.
Hi, we have the first question from Nishant. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi. So my question is that my B1, B2 visa has been already rejected due to my young age. So is the EB5 the only way for me? Because this morning itself, I got to know about Grenada program. In other program also, I've attended the Grenada program, but I come to know that Grenada program won't be that the final solution kind of. I have to go through the EB5. So I'm a bit confused on that, because I was thinking if I cannot go for EB5 due to the $9 lakh or whatever the financial part, so I could go to Grenada. So would you please clear that point? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question for us to start off the Q&A. Look, the EB5 program is the best path, most certain path towards a permanent green card in the United States. I think over the last couple of years, people have looked at processing times that were starting to get longer under the Trump administration and concern of visa backlog issues and things of that nature. And they said, hey, what other options are there? And a lot of people have jumped at this opportunity to secure citizenship in a country like Grenada that has an E2 treaty charter, and then pursue immigration to the United States via the E2 program. But what a lot of people don't understand is that E2 is not a permanent visa category. E2 requires that you invest in and manage and operate your own business, and it goes through a renewal period year after, or every couple of years. And there's no long-term stability in that, you know, you're consistently having to do that and kind of prove your intent to remain in the United States and operate that business to the US government. The other issue is in Nishant, I'm not sure if you have a family or if you have any children, but a lot of people have jumped at the opportunity for Grenada and E2, thinking, hey, this will get myself and my children to the United States a little bit more quickly. But you also have to keep in mind, because it's not a permanent immigration status, your children become ineligible for that visa at a certain age. And so they'd have to go and pursue their own E2 visa or some other immigration category to stay there. And so I think we've seen some people swayed by some misinformation, maybe take that path to pursue Grenada and E2, and then later realize, wait a minute, this really isn't the long-term solution that I want it to be. And then ultimately they turn back to EB5 as a cure-all for their ability to permanently immigrate to the United States. So I think, you know, that's some of the misinformation that needs cleared up. A lot of people out there have said, well, wait a minute, E2 might be a better solution. Well, E2 can be a solution for getting you into the United States a little bit more quickly, but it needs to work in tandem to EB5 in order to accomplish your long-term goals. So in that regard, it needs to be a companion to EB5, not just a solution to or an alternative to EB5.
Okay, thank you. That's clear my point. Is there going to be a cap in this EB5? I come to know a few years back, since a lot of people are involved in this.
Is there going to be a cap on the number of total investors?
Yeah, there will be a cap from country-wise, like from India, from China. There will be a cap in applications and everything.
Yeah.
I come to know from one of the agents a few years back.
Yeah, so that's something that's actually currently being debated. Right now, there is a cap. Like all of the other employment-based categories, there's a cap on EB5. There's 10,000 total visas that can be given to the program. Each country is eligible for 7%, so roughly 700 visas. And once those 700 visas are hit, people kind of go to the back of the line for that 10,000 allotment in that year. Right now, the balance of that allotment is largely taken up by a big backlog from countries like China and Vietnam. And in the future, there could be backlog from India as the program grows. One thing that I think is going to help, or that could help, is kind of those favorable winds blowing that I mentioned with the Biden administration. The Biden administration very quickly came out and introduced its immigration bill. Its immigration bill removes that cap, so it puts everybody in the same line. The downside to doing something like that is it would mean that investors from India would be behind investors from China. But the nice thing that the Biden bill also does is it removes derivatives from counting against those visa caps. And then it also goes back and captures unused visas from previous years. So those things in combination shrink that overall backlog and reduce the long-term likelihood that a big backlog will grow. I think in probably what you're referencing is some of those other immigration categories. I'm thinking of EB1 or EB, some of the other EB categories, in particular, the tech categories. You see tech workers from India subject to 100-year backlogs and things of that nature. That doesn't seem to be on the horizon for EB5. I think right now, you should note that India is current, meaning if you get your I-526 petition approved, you're eligible for a visa right away. And because of these favorable changes that we think can come down the road through immigration reform, the long-term likelihood that we have a big backlog in India is probably pretty low.
Okay, thanks, Nishant. We have a couple of questions coming on the chat. Mr. Venkat Suri is asking, when is the minimum investment size? What is the minimum investment size in real estate to get residence visa in USA? Is that a good way to get EB5?
Yeah, so just to provide some clarity, the EB5 program is the only immigration by investment tool for the United States. And the minimum investment amount is $900,000 US if that investment is made into a high unemployment or a rural area. If it's outside of one of those areas, it's 1.8 million, so it doubles. It's a huge number. But all of our projects that we have on the market and that we expect to introduce to the market over the coming months will be at that $900,000 investment level. Now, there are remittance challenges for moving that amount of money into the United States. CMB has structures that will allow investors to invest partial funds. Those are on a case-by-case basis. We can look at the circumstances. We'll have a minimum amount that we require the investors to invest. And then the balance of those funds at a future time. Usually we try and keep that overall investment timeline within about a year. We think that these things work well for investors coming from India because right now we're approaching the reset of the fiscal year on April 1st. And so it will allow investors to hopefully navigate the remittance issues in a legal and lawful way, which is also a very important thing for the EB5 program. The US government wants you to make your investment, wants to create the jobs, but they want to make sure that the money you've invested comes from a lawful source and that you followed the rules of your home country in transferring those funds into the United States. So I don't know if you're asking if there's another option for immigration by investment. It sounds like that was the question. And to be clear, EB5 truly is the only way to immigrate through an investment on a permanent basis to get your permanent green card.
Okay. We have another question. What is the percentage of rejection rate in EB5?
Yeah, so it changes. There's new data that comes out all the time that talks about that rejection rate. I don't know currently off the top of my head industry-wide what it is. I think it was hovering around 15% to 18%. Country by country, it's dramatically different. I can tell you right now, the country with the biggest rejection rate is Vietnam, and India is probably close behind. And the reasons are simple, and actually they touch on the answer I just provided in the previous question. The biggest reason why you have rejections in EB5, and you can have rejections for a number of different reasons. You can have an individual rejection, and largely that's going to be because the investor couldn't show that their funds came from a lawful source, or they couldn't show that they transferred the funds from their home country into the United States in a lawful way. So those are the biggest reasons why you see large numbers of rejections. The other way a person can have a rejection is if their EB5 partnership that they've invested to, it doesn't satisfy the requirements of the I-526 petition, the US government challenges some element in the structuring or the likelihood that job creation will be met, or that or challenges some other element into the way in which they've structured the partnership. And that would be a project or a partnership denial that would deny every investor in that partnership. What I would tell you is that it's more likely that someone's going to get rejected on an individual basis than on a partnership level, but those partnership rejections do occur. So it's really important that you do your due diligence on the regional center, that you understand that you're working with somebody with a track record of being able to get those projects approved. My company, CMB, has never had a partnership rejection. We have a 100% approval rate at the I-526 and I-829 stage, and that our partnerships are always getting approved, everyone that's been adjudicated. And so that's something we take a lot of pride in.
Okay, great. Another question. Can I get an EB5 visa if my partner with 45% equity and 55% equity with my company's investment in USD 3 million to set up a retail chain of showrooms for textiles? In this case, who will get the residence?
So I'll probably need a little bit more information. And to be honest with you, that would be a good question for an immigration attorney. And so that's one element that I also want to talk about. You know, CMB is a regional center. We structure these offerings. We don't make you work with one of our immigration attorneys. We actually ask that you go out and you seek an immigration attorney that's familiar with EB5, that can be an advocate for you personally and help you navigate any challenges that you have, or give you a full and better understanding of the process, and be with you along the way from that regard. We can make recommendations, certainly. But the question that you're asking seems to be one that I think would be well suited for a strong immigration attorney. You know, I think there are a couple of different ways in which you can do your EB5 investment. What we focus on is doing an EB5 investment into our regional center model. And that's the vast majority of investments that you see in EB5. They are an investment into a new commercial enterprise. In this case, it's our Group 75 partnership. Your capital is pooled with other investors, and that capital is loaned to a job creating project. Your role is relatively passive. It's not completely passive. You do have certain management rights and things of that nature, or voting rights, I should say. But your role is largely passive in the process. And so a lot of investors like that because they're not tasked with then going into the United States, maybe leaving a business back in India aside and operating a new business for the purpose of maintaining their immigration pursuit. I think the question that you're asking is more so akin to expanding a business or moving a business into the United States and investing through that business to create an immigration vehicle. And that sounds like a L1 type immigration option that I think an immigration attorney familiar with L1 might be more appropriate to speak with.
Okay, great. We have a question from the audience. Ajay, please unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, I think, yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Ajay. Yes.
Can you listen me?
Yes,
Hi.
yes.
I am Ajay. I want to know that in EB5 visa, how much I have to transfer money to US, and after how much time it releases to me for my work.
And after how much, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How much time does it release back to him for his work?
Yeah, so the minimum investment amount is $900,000 US, and the full amount does have to be invested. As I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to allow you to invest a portion of that capital, and then the balance of that capital within about a year time frame, depending on the opportunity, depending on the project. We'll have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. But the full $900,000 is required to be invested into the new commercial enterprise so that it can be made available to the project. Now, I think what you're asking is once that $900,000, how much is released back to you by way of a return on that investment?
Yes, ROI.
ROI on EB5 is typically very low. In CMB's partnerships, the partnership earns about 1% return on investment. So it's not a high ROI. EB5 is different. Remember, this is not a traditional business investment. We always say that if you want to do a traditional business investment, there are other options available to you. We actually have other options available for traditional investments, but they don't come with that immigration benefit. EB5 is uniquely structured for the immigration benefit.
Okay, I think that's good. We have another question. What is the rate of return on investment? And money needs to be self-funded or it can be bank funded? This is asked by Harshad Chande.
Right. So I just touched on that with the previous question. So return on investment to the partnership is about 1%. The individual investor earns a return of a little less than that, about 0.8% on our EB5 investments. You'll see that traditionally that's about market rate in EB5. There are some other groups out there offering much higher rates of return. They're usually newer regional centers that don't have track record, and they're trying to attract EB5 investors with that high rate of return to kind of overshadow the fact that they don't have a track record. What I think is important to touch on here, though, is again, with EB5, we're talking risk mitigated EB5 investment opportunities. We're talking about projects that we want to enhance the likelihood that they'll be completed on time and on budget, create those jobs. And so overburdening the project with a high debt load and high cost of capital in order to yield a high rate of return to the EB5 investors, it isn't something that makes sense for an EB5 investment. I apologize. What was the second part of the question?
I just shut one second. What is does the money need to be self-funded or it can be bank funded?
Great question. So the EB5 program does allow the money to be borrowed. So it can be borrowed funds. Again, you have to follow the rules of your home country. For instance, in India, as I'm aware, it's improper to take out a mortgage on your home or your business and then use those funds for a foreign investment. So, the way in which those funds need to be secured and then transferred and made available for your EB5 investment needs to be done properly. So that's something that I would advise you to work with, your personal accountant, chartered accountant, or CPA, and then also your immigration attorney to make sure that you structured that in a way in which makes sense both from the laws of India and then also something that will qualify from an EB5 investment standpoint.
Okay, we have another question. What is expected? How many years would we take to recover the cost of our investment?
Yeah, so all of our partnerships are structured as 6-year loans. And so at the end of that 6 years, borrower is obligated to repay that debt. And any investor who has made it through their immigration cycle is eligible at that time to receive the return of their capital. And so typically speaking, provided that there is no visa backlog or anything like that that would delay some element of that process, it's about 6-year horizon for investors to receive the return of their capital. If you're able to get through the immigration process a little sooner than that, and the borrower fully repays that loan prior to the 6 years, then it could be a little less than 6 years.
Okay, one last question from Mr. Khosla from Chandigarh. He's asking, we would like to make at least 30 to 40% of the total investment by borrowing from my relatives based in New Jersey. Would it be allowed?
Absolutely, yes, it would be allowed. Again, the program currently allows for investors to be able to borrow those funds for the purposes of their EB5 investment. Again, I would recommend that you speak with a qualified EB5 immigration attorney on the best way to structure that and make sure that it remains compliant with the laws of the EB5 program. One quick thing on that, that's something that has gone back and forth. USCIS originally challenged the ability for investors to be able to borrow those funds if they weren't collateralized with their own assets. And since then, law has overturned that. It allows investors to borrow those funds and to use those as part of their EB5 investment. But again, I'd make sure that I speak with a qualified immigration attorney on the best way to prove that lending relationship and to structure that so that it meets the requirements of the EB5 program.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Insightful presentation. We've posted the link on the chat for the IREX Residency and Citizenship virtual exhibition. Matt and the Cmb Regional Center team will be available at their virtual booth to speak to you and answer all your queries. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Matt, once again.
Thank you. I want to thank IREX again wonderful team, and thank everybody who attended and asked questions. Have a great day.